Hello, welcome to another Purple Insider Extra. Matthew Coller here, along with Sam Ekstrom, and we have some good news for the Minnesota Vikings that Harrison Smith is going to be sticking around for a very long time. He signs a 4-year contract extension, $26 million guaranteed, $64 million overall. Sam, I think what we need to begin with is sort of what this means for the long term of the Minnesota Vikings defense. They're going to have a lot of question marks going forward, starting with the number of free agents that they'll have after this year. Anthony Barr, Danielle Hunter likely will need a new contract. Bashad Breeland, Mackenzie Alexander, Everson Griffin, all these players, their futures are up in the air. So at least the Vikings know that Harrison Smith is going to be a major part of this defense going forward.
Yeah, this probably clinches the Viking for life mantra that I think he was talking about earlier this offseason. He signs through, his age 37 season, and I don't know if he'll see that year. This is probably a front-loaded deal, but this does clear up, one murky area for next season where there was, you're wondering if Xavier Woods and Harrison Smith would move on and suddenly you're without any safeties. This keeps around a staple of your defense. Now, I think we'll get into some other ramifications here, whether that's, financial situation with Harrison getting maybe a little overpaid, needing to find money now to sign some of those other free agents. This is a big deal, Caller. $16 million per year for a 32-year-old safety. That's a sizable contract. And even though it's only $26 million guaranteed, that does lock him in for next year, maybe even the year after that. And who knows what his level of play will be even this year. I think there are some questions still to be asked.
No, I think that's right. And when you look at the overall price tag and you compare that to other safeties that are older, that's where I'm a little confused about why they paid top dollar right now as opposed to waiting this out to see how he plays in his age 32 season. So when you look at Devin McCourty, he only got $16 million guaranteed. Malcolm Jenkins was the contract that I thought was going to be comparable. He only got around $16 million guaranteed at the same age as Harrison Smith, where Harrison is getting the same amount as John Johnson, who signed with the Cleveland Browns this offseason and is maybe 6 years younger than Harrison Smith and hitting free agency for the first time. This is also not a position that's getting paid a whole lot these days. I think there's a lot of teams that are looking at safety and saying these aren't necessarily the guys where we're going to pour the most money into. Even Mike Zimmer at the NFL Combine 2 years ago said when they were talking about Anthony Harris, this isn't a position that we really want to pay a ton, but Harrison Smith is the exception. He is a guy that's going to be in the Ring of Honor eventually, and if there's one thing that does help his case for playing longer term into his mid-30s, it's that he plays with IQ and not necessarily just physical freakishness. And he even talked today about how Mike Zimmer has helped him become a smarter and smarter football player as he's gone along. So I think as you're projecting it, you could say, yes, you overpaid, but there's a likelihood over the next couple of years that he will play at a pretty high level.
Yeah, he wins with his head. He diagnoses things before the play even happens. He hovers around the box and finds, those opportunities to blitz. He's a really cerebral football player, and he makes the guys around him better, and he helps people get lined up. He's very instrumental to this defense. And the Vikings often like awarding those staple, defensive players a third contract. Everson Griffin got one. Linval Joseph got one, even though his first contract was with New York. I imagine Eric Kendricks will probably sign another contract here. That's kind of how the Vikings roll. They like to reward their guys. Now, has it always worked out beautifully? No. Everson Griffin only lasted 1 year into that extension after a restructure. Linval Joseph was cut pretty early. On the offensive side of the ball, Kyle Rudolph got a third contract. He was cut pretty early. So this does give a little sticker shock. 4 years, $64 million. But I think what you have to look at are the guarantees up front. And Harrison's going to get like $22 million between this year and then next March. A lot of it is guaranteed up front. So does this bind the Vikings financially at all, Matthew, in your opinion, or even as early as next year? Do you think this will be an impediment?
An impediment, I'm going to say probably not. But eventually, if you have a contract go bad, that there's a bill to be paid. And we've seen this from the Vikings after the 2019 season when they handed out a bunch of contract extensions to make sure that they kept the band together. Eventually, the salary cap does get in the way. And this is the risk that you're taking with this Harrison Smith deal, is that if he struggles this year and shows any sign of slipping with his play, you are now on the hook for at least several more years of this. And the way that they generally structure them is the contract cap hit will be a little bit lower that first year of the extension and then take a big jump the second year. That's what we saw with Anthony Barr. I believe that's how Kyle Rudolph's worked. And then after that, when the guarantees run out, usually that's when they can cut the player and get out from under it. 2022 probably won't be that bad. We'll see a big jump in the salary cap in 2023. But as we saw with Kyle Rudolph, his play started to slip in that third year, and they were still on the hook for a lot of money. I think it was a $9 million cap hit. So that's the risk you take. And I think there's another question to be asked just about the big picture of this team, that they have not drafted particularly well to find the players that can take over for the guys who have been here a long time. So their answer is often to sign short-term contracts, or is now, especially this offseason, short-term contracts, or just keep paying the guys that you've kept. And as you mentioned, these contracts have not always worked out the best. I mean, Adam Thielen's has worked out extremely well, but Anthony Barr's, after a year that he missed to injury, he's already starting this year with injury. I think that even when some of these players are truly excellent, which Harrison Smith is, you are still walking a very thin line. And it makes me wonder too, what is your long term? And Harrison Smith was not really asked about this, but when you look around at this roster, like, who's staying? Who's going to be here? Is it going to be the same coach? How are you going to look in even a year or two as we go down the road on this contract?
Well, I think the disappointing part to me is you can't really overinvest at safety. That's just not a position where you want to be too heavily bought in. They already are super overinvested at linebacker as well. So you've got two defensive positions where there's already a lot of money. So if Xavier Woods plays really well this year, he's in his prime, wouldn't you rather be giving him some money than a 33-year-old Harrison Smith? And I know he's a legend in Minnesota, but you know, this almost makes it impossible for the Vikings to bring back Xavier Woods, because you know that this is a rehabilitation year for his stock. Like, he wants to bolster that and be able to sign a big contract. And I don't know if it can be with the Vikings now. I don't think you can give two top dollar contracts at the safety position. You just don't have the money to do that. So this might be 1 year for Xavier Woods, and then you hope Cam Bynum becomes the next guy. And after that, who knows? If Bynum can't be it, then you're drafting one, you're signing another cheap 1 year deal, and there are question marks next year in the secondary.
I think what's become extremely clear from this team is that they're going to, as long as Mike Zimmer is the coach and Rick Spielman is the general manager, they're going to do things the way that those guys do things. That they're not going to sort of shift or make a change where they would trade a player of this type of value just knowing that his age, and do this sort of efficiency and what you can get back. Like, they're just not going to do those things. The guys that they've had success with, the guys that they've drafted, they're going to pay, and then they're going to hope that the other parts of the roster can be filled out by hitting on later draft picks. In recent years, that hasn't been the case, and that's where a Cam Bynum eventually might have to pay dividends, because next year there won't be as many players looking for 1 year contracts. So I guess that's where the biggest question comes to me, is the next 2 years. How are you going to fill out the rest of the spots when you are paying a lot of people a lot of money? But if there is anyone who has earned it from past performance, it is Harrison Smith. He didn't make the Pro Bowl last year, but that was a wrong decision, I think, by the Pro Bowl voters. So that's our take on the Harrison Smith extension. We'll see how it plays out. As well as every contract, you never do know if it's going to work or not. Matthew Coller, Sam Ekstrom. This has been a Purple Insider Extra. Make sure you listen to our emergency podcast on the same matter wherever you get your podcasts. Go to Purple Insider and our write-up at purpleinsider.substack.com, and we'll catch you next time.